Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. The ADHD tax is the invisible price tag that can follow an ADHD brain through everyday life. It shows up in late fees, missed deadlines, forgotten subscriptions, impulse spending, lost items, unexpected healthcare costs, budgeting setbacks, and even damaged relationships. Now, these little hits may seem minor in the moment, but they can quickly add up. And in a world built for a different type of mind, today we're looking at why this happens and what people with ADHD can do to get ahead of it. I'm joined by Sarah Ennor. She's the founder of Growth Counsel. She's a public speaker on ADHD and has many years of experience practicing as a lawyer. Sarah, welcome back to Empowered. Thank you so much for coming back on again.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks.
Okay, let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
When you and I were discussing ADHD tax, I thought, oh my gosh, there's a new tax coming out. But that's not the truth. What exactly is ADHD tax?
Yeah, so never fear. The ADHD tax is already here. It's been here forever. It's actually a subset of the disability tax that you may or may not have heard of. So essentially, it's the extra time, energy, effort, and money that we spend in order to operate in the same way as our neurotypical peers do day to day.
Okay, so what are some common financial penalties people with ADHD experience?
So I think it's important to point out that the things that we see as expenses as ADHDers are still things that other people experience as well. So it'll be things like subscribing to a free trial on an app or something, and then having the subscription renew when you weren't paying attention and having to pay for that, being locked into that. It could be spending money on taxis or gas or parking because you realized you were late for something and had to now invest in that travel. It can even be things like in your refrigerator, having an entire week's worth of groceries go bad because you forgot it existed or you didn't have the energy to actually cook that week. So we're throwing out the groceries and having to go back and purchase again. So it's all these little things that we much more frequently than a neurotypical person experience because of our lack of working memory and other things.
I want to go back to two things.
Sure.
Number one, the subscriptions.
Yeah.
Because that is a killer for everybody. And I don't like to use that word, but so many people think I'm going to do a free subscription, put down their credit card, forget about it, and forget about the fact that the 3-month trial is over. And then all of a sudden, you keep paying throughout the years.
That's right.
There was a study that came out a couple of years ago, and they had asked a whole bunch of people, how many subscriptions do you think you are subscribed to and you're paying for per month?
Yeah.
And most people thought 3. I think the average was 8, and it went up to 12. And that's a huge tax on your life.
That's right.
And the other one, too, that you had just mentioned, food. I think the average family, not just somebody with ADHD who's living alone, I think it was like $1,500 or $1,700 a year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and exactly. And then you multiply that when you have ADHD because you really just forget that, all the meal planning in the world is not going to help you. And because you probably won't even do the planning because you don't have that consistency.
You don't have it within you
That's
to
right.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the last time you were here, we talked about calendars.
Yeah.
And you said they don't work?
Yeah, so the challenge with ADHD is that we have an interest-based nervous system. So we need things to be novel. We need things to be interesting. We need things to be kind of competitive or complicated for us to keep our interest on them. And so I think I pointed to my Apple Watch and I said, look at all the reminders I'm currently ignoring, right? And so I have calendar entries and tasks set up to remind me, cancel that subscription. Don't forget to fill out my Factor food box because it's coming on Saturday. And I still forget very frequently because those things become invisible to me. So they can work, but they tend to work for a short period, and then we lose track of them.
But I can totally see that because when you've got a calendar, sometimes it's like dismiss or snooze.
Exactly.
And if you keep snoozing it, you're like, okay, I'm kind of done with this now. But the key is twice you've been on here and twice you've been on time or early.
Yeah. Well, the last time, if you recall, I think I drove down about 2 hours early and sat in a restaurant in advance. This time I risked everything and I came thinking I'd arrive right at 11:30. And aside from a little snafu on the location, I made it. So I've been very much practicing and putting in some systems to try to help myself realize all the things that I have to get done before I leave the house. So.
Okay, so we will continue this discussion. Please don't go away. We'll be right back with more of the ADHD tax and basically the struggles that a lot of people have to go through with ADHD. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is planning for the ADHD tax. Okay, Sarah, I want to talk about unique challenges that women face specifically. So do women with ADHD face unique financial challenges?
Yeah, so I think the primary way that women face a bigger hurdle in this situation is that we tend to carry the mental load at home. So where most people just have to deal with their own finances and deal with all the taxes that are coming up left and right and keeping track of their administration, women are trying to do that for their spouses and for their children and get people to the soccer game and figure all of that out. So that puts a strain on their capacity. And it means that then they have more of a challenge potentially with managing their own finances and keeping on top of those.
What about non-finance?
Yeah, well, I mean, so there's a couple of things that can come up in the ADHD tax in that sense. There's things like missed opportunity and missed deadlines. So, for example, you might miss the deadline to apply for your dream job, or in my case, the conference I want to speak at. You might miss an opportunity because you overthought whether you should buy that concert ticket now and then they were sold out, or the course you wanted to take and the price suddenly jumped. For me, I oftentimes will spend so much time trying to save $5 on a plane ticket. I don't know what it is about plane tickets in me. And then I end up paying $100 more than I would have if I just bought it the first minute I found the ticket. So we can overthink quite a bit.
Okay, so explain to me about the overthinking, because there's a lot of people who say, well, I can't make a decision.
Yeah.
How do you make a decision? Is this not making a decision, or is this just exacerbating the item in your head?
So I think the idea is to be a little bit more self-aware whenever you can. And I often say that I'm self-aware when I remember to be. So I allow people to take this with a grain of salt. But if you realize that it's happening, I can start to take steps. So for example, on my plane ticket example, I say, okay, I only have 30 minutes to make this decision. I have to just buy whatever's available. If I can't afford it, I can't afford it. That's fine. Then I have to say no.
Yes.
But if I can and I'm willing to pay that amount, then I try to make the decision quicker. Because there's also the cost of just the effort that goes into thinking about it and the time you spend. Like I could spend an entire weekend looking at plane tickets. What's the point to save $5 or $10, right? So yeah, I think that it's really important to try to set yourself a decision point. Like, is this important enough that I should be spending this time, or do I need to set myself a deadline and move on with it?
And I think that's important because a lot of people don't look at that whole, how much is it costing me to look at this plane ticket?
Yeah.
And whether it's $5, $100, whatever it is, making a decision is really important, regardless of whether you have ADHD or you don't.
Yeah.
Because as you said, it really sucks up a lot of your time.
Yeah, and I remember thinking about this quite a lot when I was lawyering, right? Because my hour is worth X number of dollars. And so there were often times when I'd say, it's worth it for me to get a cleaning help, right? Because that way I don't have to spend $500, $600, $700 an hour of my time cleaning my apartment. And yet we forget to do that when it comes to things like self-care, like taking care of our finances, taking care of our bodies, exercising, all of that, our health. Like another ADHD tax can be where we spend so much more on healthcare. We've got these comorbidities of things like chronic pain, insomnia, anxiety and depression, those kinds of mental health challenges. And we spend exorbitantly more time going to doctors. I spent $20,000 on physiotherapy over the last 10 years.
Wow.
And I didn't realize that I'd spent that much because I was going every week or every month. So, being aware of those extra costs of addiction potentially if someone is having challenges with that because of their impulse control. So yeah, there's the healthcare issue as well. So.
And women typically put their health aside because they're caregiving for others, whether it's children, their parents, or whatever. But this has gone to that next level where you were constantly going.
Yeah.
Because you thought it was helping you out, but in the long run, did it?
Well, I mean, listen, my body needs constant care, but what I've noticed as well is it needs constant different care.
Yes.
So did I need to be going to see the physio all the time? Maybe I should have been sprinkling in a little bit more of chiropractic and acupuncture and other things, exercise even, things that could have just made that sort of novelty for my body, because I find my body needs the novelty as much as my brain does.
Exercise is really important for women.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters whether you have ADHD or whether you don't. like we need to keep moving. And I
That's right.
think with exercise, it gets our brain moving as well. And I think it gets us onto that proper trajectory, health-wise, work-wise, and everything else that we do. I want to continue this conversation with you when we come back, because we do have to go to commercial break. But I want to talk about destructive money habits when we return. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more ADHD tax and how it affects you. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is planning for the ADHD tax. So Sarah, let's just continue, because I'm starting to really get into this topic. I want to talk about people with ADHD and whether they're more prone to destructive money habits, and whether that includes being impulsive, forgetful, and just overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the last time I was on, we talked about what ADHD really is, and it's really a condition of inconsistent regulation of our executive functions. So that's things like our impulse control, our self-awareness, our working memory, our planning and problem solving, and probably layered on top of that is the most important, is our emotional regulation in general. So that speaks to the overwhelm that you're referring to. So when we're dysregulated emotionally, then we tend to be more impulsive and be less self-aware and feel more overwhelmed when it comes to planning and problem solving and those kinds of things. Our working memory, that's the forgetfulness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is those executive function challenges that ADHDers have are the full reason why we tend to have poorer hygiene when it comes to finances, I think. So we might, for example, be in the middle of the night, decide that we really need to have that orange polka dot mini dress, and we purchase it and we get it, and then we realize, oh, this is not for me. I now need to return it. I've acted on impulse. Or, we might misplace something in the night and then realize that we think we're going to have to buy a replacement pair of sunglasses, and we buy them, and then the next day we find them. So that kind of, inability to even just things that aren't in our immediate vision, aren't always apparent to us. So we might lose those things that we think, we might just think that they're gone when they're in fact just across the room somewhere I haven't looked.
So with somebody that is watching today and does have ADHD, how do you help curb some of that?
So I think I would refer to 3 Ps that I came up with on my way driving to the studio. And one of them is planning. So although we don't necessarily have consistency in our planning abilities, we can, in a state of regulation, decide, okay, what are some small things that I can do? One example might be using your bank's automated payment system so that okay, my credit card minimum payment is this, my hydro bill is always $70, setting it up so it automatically deducts from a credit card or bank account so that you don't miss that minimum payment and get dinged with a fee.
Can I just interrupt, please?
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of minimum payments.
No, me either, I know.
And I just want to make sure that if anybody has, credit card debt, pay it off as quickly as possible, because you're penalized
100%.
with the minimum payment. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Yeah, and I pay my credit card in full every single month, all the time, no exceptions.
Good.
But what I was referring to is really making sure that you at least, for example, if you don't know if it's going to be $2,000 or $4,000, you set the minimum payment so you don't get dinged with that penalty. And then if you're a few days late, it's a little bit of like interest or something like that you're dealing with, but you can always adjust it as you get closer. The other thing that we can do aside from planning is to be prompt. So again, that dress that I bought in the middle of the night when I realized I don't want it because it's horrible and ugly and orange, don't wait and say, oh, I'll get it to it next week or the next time I go out. We've got to go and deal with the return right away. Otherwise, you're going to miss the window and you'll end up with this hideous dress that you don't want. And the last thing is actually a little bit counterintuitive, but we can actually prepay the ADHD tax in ways that are more empowering to us. So an example might be when we talk about those meal kits, right? Instead of buying groceries and letting them go to waste and throwing them all out, I can say, you know what? I know that I'm not going to have energy at least 3 days a week to cook a meal, so I'm going to get pre-made meals. I'm going to have snacks on hand in my cupboard that I can reach to that don't involve cooking at all, and just expect that there's going to be, your brain is working as it's intended, but it's not necessarily going to work the way that the world around us expects. So those are some of the ways I think we can get right ahead of it.
So I want to talk about nutrition because that's really important. And I've had Amy Jones on, who is an ADHD nutritionist. Is there anything specific that you fall back on to help you?
As in snacks specifically?
As
I
in
mean,
food,
listen,
yes,
a lunch
nutrition.
for me is a little pre-seasoned can of tuna, some crackers, and a carrot stick or a piece of cucumber, right? Like that is a complete meal that has everything that I need. It's quick and easy. I do use like factor meals prep and just I couldn't tell you the first time that I went from an appointment and said, I'm going to go home and have lunch, and realize how freeing it was to think I literally have to put this in the microwave for 2 minutes and then I'm going to be eating. I don't have to figure out what to buy, whether I have it at home, how I'm going to cook it, how I'm going to chop it. It just was so easy and relaxing in my brain. So I really recommend people making it easier for them, because nutrition is only nutrition if you get it in your body.
Yes.
And protein shakes are another thing to make sure that I'm just getting some nutrition and yeah, the things that my body need to be successful and be awake as well, right? And supplements are always helpful.
Always,
Yeah.
always. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. I'm joined by Sarah Ennor. She's the founder of Growth Counsel, and she's a public speaker on ADHD and has many years of experience practicing as a lawyer. So, Sarah, let's continue, because I know that this episode is going to help so many people out there, people that are struggling and thinking, I don't understand what's happening in my life and what's going on. Now, before we went to break, you were talking about using automation tools.
Yep.
Let's talk about financial experts and how much they can help as well.
Yeah, so I would really love to get the message out to advisors and other folks in branches that they have a real role to play in supporting ADHD people. Now, ADHD people will often not disclose their ADHD. It doesn't seem relevant in the context of financial, but it would be really good if advisors were aware that by knowing in the Know Your Client process, getting to understand the style of how people manage money is really important, even if you're not focusing it around ADHD, because they would learn very quickly from people like me that I'm not going to do well if you send me a whole bunch of documents that I have to review on my own and send back to you. So it might be better, for example, for them to sit down with me and go through things one time so I'm not postponing and putting it off. They can also really help me by giving me more reminders. So maybe it means that you have to follow up with your client a little more frequently than the annual requirements that you might have. So I think anything that you can do to understand exactly how your client actually operates in the context of their own finances, that gives you the opportunity then to be a real value to them as an advisor and help them stay on track.
That's a really good point, because throughout with the regulators, you've got to keep updating documentation, and it is onerous. There's a lot of paperwork, and perhaps having do you have ADHD or something on there to tick would be very helpful for not only you but the advisor as well. And in the whole know your client, you do know your client, you talk to them, you understand. But as you said, sometimes people don't disclose it,
right?
And when they don't disclose it, you don't quite understand what I don't want to call it disabilities, but what issues, technical, whatever it is, people are dealing with.
And that's really another way to ask it, rather than having to ask someone whether they have ADHD, which can be uncomfortable. More just saying, where do you find the financial challenges are in your life? Like, what's hard for you when it comes to your finances? Where do you find it easy to keep on top, and where don't you? And then you can put systems in place to make sure that you're filling the gaps, or even maybe you're helping them to save, because okay, well, we have to acknowledge you're going to spend more money on this ADHD tax. Let's make sure we're putting aside X amount per paycheck, just so that you have that money when that late fee comes in, when you have to pay twice as much for your vacation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, this is good. This has been enlightening for me, because dealing with these know your client rules and stuff that never ever comes up, which is really important. We're going to talk about money mistakes. Most people that make money mistakes are ashamed. It doesn't matter whether you have ADHD or not. A lot of people are ashamed of spending too much, or not saving enough, or not paying on time, or whatever it is. If someone with ADHD feels ashamed of their money mistakes, what would you want them to hear?
Well, I think you said part of it already, which is you're not alone, right? It's not just because you have ADHD, you're not the only person who's struggling. So even though we're already facing so many different negative messages about our ADHD over time, it doesn't mean that this is something we can't overcome. So I want people to be kind to themselves, to keep trying, because very small things compound both in negative and positive ways.
Agreed.
So all we need to do is start saying, okay, I made a mistake here. Let's try again with something small again.
And so we've got 30 seconds left. I want to end on a very positive note. Are there financial strengths that come with ADHD?
Yeah, strengths and weaknesses for every brain type. For ADHD, we actually are quite comfortable with risk. So sometimes we can make investments that others would be afraid to try, and that can result in good returns. We're creative, so we can find creative ways to deal with any challenges that we've created for ourselves, and find ways to earn money to pay them off. There's all there are all kinds of ways that ADHDers are actually really great with money as well.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on Empowered
Thank
again,
you.
Sarah.
Great to be here.
Sarah's work is all about making ADHD human and profitable. And she says tax planning and financial strategy can minimize taxes and maximize wealth. And we can do the same for the ADHD tax. Once we let go of the shame and identify the hidden costs of ADHD, we can implement simple habits that reduce them. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.